Okay, let's take a look at this equation. We have 2x to the 6th, take away 10x to the 4th, minus 48x squared equals to 0. So let's take a look at step 1. Step 1 is to move all terms to one side and then set the equation equals to 0. As you can see, we have 0 on this side, therefore we do not have to get rid of it. Okay, there is nothing on this side that we have to get rid of it. Okay, so we're all done. So step 1 is done. Now step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. Okay, so first thing we have to do is look for greatest common factor. Greatest common factor for these three terms is going to be 2. You can pull a 2 out, and then you can pull out an x squared from each one. Okay, so 2x squared is the greatest common factor. So when you divide all of these by 2x squared, this one you get x to the 4th minus 5x squared minus 24. Okay, and then all that equals to 0. Okay, so continue to factor. Okay, we're going to able to factor this trinomial, okay, using the AC method. A times C is negative 24, and then your B is negative 5. So now we have to come up with factors of negative 24, but when you add those numbers, comes out to negative 5. How about negative 8 and then positive 3? Okay, so these are the two numbers we're looking for. So then we're going to use those and write it out in factor form. So 2x squared, and then this one is going to be x squared take away 8, and then x squared plus 3. And then this is going to equals to 0. And then the last thing we have to do is to set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for it. One of the factors is 2x squared, so we go 2x squared is 0. So we would have to divide by 2. So x squared is 0. And then you take the square root of x squared, square root of 0. So your x is going to be 0. So this is one of the roots. Now let's go on to this one. So you have x squared take away 8 is 0. And plus 8. So you have x squared is positive 8. Then take the square root of it. So x is going to be plus or minus. Now we have to simplify this, so we can break this up into square root of 4 times square root of 2. So this is going to be 2. So this would be 2 square root of 2. So we have two more roots here, okay, because of the plus and minus. Okay, and then we have one more to solve for. X squared plus 3 equals to 0. So we're going to set this equals to 0. So here x squared plus 3 is 0 minus 3. So x squared is negative 3, and then take the square root of it. So square root of x squared, square root of negative 3. So x is going to be plus or minus I square root of 3. We have two more roots, but these are complex roots. So x is, we're going to list all the roots, all the zeros, all the x-intercept. So we have 0 plus or minus I square root of 3. And then plus or minus 2 square root of 2. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. So here we have to solve 3x to the 4th minus 2x squared equals to 16. Okay, so first thing we have to do is move all terms to one side and then set the equation equals to 0. So we do not have a 0 on this side, so we have to get rid of it to make it come out to 0. We would have to minus 16. We do the opposite. So if you minus 16 to the right, you get a minus 16 to the left. Okay, so bring down 3x to the fourth. Bring down negative 2x squared. Bring down negative 16. And then we know that these two add up to 0. Okay, step 2 is to factor the polynomial completely. So here we have a trinomial. Okay, so we're going to factor using the AC method and then slip and slide. So A times C, so A is 3, C is negative 16, so 3 times negative 16 is negative 48, and then your B is negative 2. Okay, so we have to come up with factors of negative 48 that when we add those numbers comes out to negative 2. How about we do negative 8 and then positive 6. So here we're going to have x squared because it's 4 here, guys. Okay, so we're going to need x squared, take away 8, and then x squared plus 6. Okay, because your leading coefficient is a 3 and not a 1, we're going to use the slip and slide method. So we're going to divide this by 3. And then we divide this by 3. Okay, so 3 cannot go into 8 exactly, so the 3 is going to come to the front. So we're going to have 3x squared, take away 8. So this is one of the factors. The other one, 3 goes into 6 2 times, so that would be x squared plus 2 equals to 0. Okay, so these are the two factors. And then the last thing we have to do is to set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for x. So the first factors is 3x squared take away 8 is 0 plus 8. Okay, so this is 3x squared equals to positive 8. And then divide by 3. So we have x squared is 8 over 3. Okay, and then take the square root of it. Okay, so here we have square root of x squared, square root of 8 over 3. So x is going to be plus or minus square root of 8 over 3. Okay, so you're going to have to simplify this. So we split them up into square root of 8 over square root of 3. Now square root of 8 is going to be 2 square root of 2 all over square root of 3. You cannot have square root at the bottom, so you're going to have to rationalize it. So to rationalize, you would have to multiply top and bottom by square root of 3. So I multiplied this by square root of 3, and then I multiplied this by square root of 3. So my answer is going to be, so the answer is going to be 2 square root of 6 all over 3. Okay, so here we're going to have x equals 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 6 all over 3. Okay, so these are the two roots. Okay, so the other one is x squared, this one right here, x squared plus 2 is 0. Solving for x minus 2, so x squared is negative 2. And to go from x squared to x, you take square root of it. So square root of x squared, square root of -2. So x is going to be, move up here. So x is going to be plus or minus I square root of 2. So these are the other two roots. Okay, so you have two real roots. So these are the real roots. And then two complex roots because of the I. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. Okay, so here, this is a polynomial of 4 terms. As you can see, we have 4 terms. Okay, so we're going to solve this. Okay, so first thing we have to do is move all terms to one side and then set the equations equals to 0. So here we have 0 already, so we don't have to move it. So step 1 is all done. And then step 2 is to factor this completely. We're going to use the grouping method to factor this. And then from there we can solve it. Okay, so we're going to break this up into 2 groups. So the first 2 is going to be one group. And then the last 2 will be the other group. So this is group 1 and then group 2. Break them up into 2 groups. Okay, so for this group, we're going to factor this by pulling out the greatest common factor. So your greatest common factor here is going to be x squared. So if you pull out an x squared, you're left with x plus 2. And then the other one, and then group 2, your greatest common factor is a 5. It's a positive 5. And then when you pull out a 5, you're left with x plus 2. And then that equals to 0. See how you have a common binomial factor. So those are your common factors. So you're going to pull it out, x plus 2. And then when you pull it out, you have x squared. All right, we'll pull this out. You have x squared left over, and then plus 5. So these are the 2 factors of the original polynomial. Okay, and then the last thing we have to do is set each factor equals to 0 and then solve for x. Okay, here you have x plus 2 equals to 0 and then solve for x. Minus 2 minus 2. So x is -2. Okay, the other one is x squared plus 5 equals to 0. Take away 5, take away 5. So you have x squared is -5. So to go from x squared to x, you take the square root of it. So square root of x squared and then square root of -5. So this is x. And then simplify here. Equals to plus or minus I times square root of 5. So here we have x equals to -2 and then plus or minus I square root of 5. Okay, so let's take a look at another example. Okay, so this is going to be the last one we're going to do. Okay, so first thing we have to do is move all terms to one side and then set the equation equals to 0. So we have 0 on the other side, so we do not have to move it. So we're all done with step 1. Now step 2 is to factor it completely. Again, we have a polynomial of 4 terms. So we're going to factor this using the grouping method. So we're going to break them up into 2 groups. So the first 2 terms is going to be the first group, and then the last 2 terms is going to be the other group. We're going to factor the first group by taking out the greatest common factor, and that is going to be x squared. So if I pull out x squared, I have 2x minus 3 left over. And then the second group, the greatest common factor is going to be negative 16. So if I pull out negative 16, I have 2x minus 3 left over. If you look inside of a parenthesis, you have a common binomial. So see how you have 2x minus 3 and then 2x minus 3. So we're going to pull that out. That is your common factor. So 2x minus 3. Okay, and then you're left with x squared. And then over here, you're left with negative 16 equals to 0. Okay, so those are the factors. So now we're going to set each of those factors equals to 0 and then solve for it. So the first one is 2x minus 3 equals to 0. So we add 3. So 2x equals to 3. And then divide by 2. So your x is going to be 3 over 2. Okay, so this is one of the roots. Look at the other one. So here you have x squared minus 16 equals to 0. So plus 16, x squared is 16. And then to go from x squared to x, you're going to take square root of it. So square root of x squared, square root of 16. So x is going to be plus or minus 4. This equation has 3 real roots. So these are all real numbers. So x is, you got plus or minus 4. And then you have 3 over 2.